First of all, I would like to start with a very special panel. Only ladies. It's not for ladies only, but only ladies. And don't ask me why they're just ladies on the stage for now, but we got a reason. I would ask forwards. MONZON. She's chief meteorologist from Wapa TV, Puerto Rico, United States. Take a seat. Evelyne DHÉLIAT. She's the French famous speaker, head of TV1 and LC1 weather services in France. Her English is as good as my French, so she's going to do French and I'm going to do English. Try to. Then someone else who can bring a lot of energy to stage. Who doesn't know her? Bernadette WOODS-PLACKY. Bernadette is meteorologist and director of Climate Matters at Climate Central United States. That's an organization which provides a lot of critical information to communicate about climate change. Then we have Diane, LAOUROU, if I speak as well. She's a forecaster of Météo Benin. Diane, are you going to do it in French, Français or Anglais? Français. Okay. We're mixed. And we've got Brigitte. Brigitte is head of strategic communication of the world's meteorological organization. Well, are there power ladies or not? That means actually there are only guys in the audience right now. All the ladies are here. No, not really. There, I don't know. Ala, let's start with you. You're working for a Spanish language station. She's widely recognized for her leadership and tireless efforts in forecasting, science education, and communication and community service. What kind of climate communication works well in your country?
Well, first of all, good afternoon. Thank you so much for... Oh, sorry.
That will help.
Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello, buenos días.
Buenos días, buenas tardes a todos. Well, it's an honor, a privilege to be here sharing all these experiences with you. And I hope that as climate leaders in each of our countries, we can bring the best of the actions that you all have and bring solutions to all the problems that we are all facing. So what works best? What works best is stating problems and stating solutions. I don't believe that we can continue on stating more problems as we understand and we know, but we have to have a positive message in each of the broadcasts that we do, or even in projects. Focus on the action. There are so many compound effects of climate change. For example, lack of electricity and a heat wave. We have dust and a heat wave, and we have health issues because of this and that. So we have to continue to work in our message and bring solutions to the table. And
are you able to do that in your weather forecasts as well, or are they too short?
I am here with 3 different hats.
Okay.
I am here with a weather forecaster hat in the television. I'm here with the hat of an educator for the Science Museum of Puerto Rico. And I'm also on the executive committee of climate change for the government of Puerto Rico. So for each of these audiences, the solutions are diverse. And you have to bring that message. Every time that you sit on a table, you have a voice and you have to bring a solution. There's no other way.
Evelyne. I'm going to speak slowly because it has to be translated and Evelyne has to respond. You are a real expert with a huge amount of years of experience. Your career started in 1968. I think a lot of us were not even born by that, but we look older than she does.
Yes.
In 1992, you became a weather presenter. What big changes can you point in the career you have experienced?
Absolument. Alors, je suis désolée.
Yes, I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to be speaking in French because my English isn't up to scratch to be able to speak in English and to talk about these different points. Since 1992, I am part of the meteorological web service of TF1, which is one of the leading channels in France, and also LCI. I'm also in charge of these two services, and in the last 3 decades or more,
Changement et notamment
I have seen huge changes, especially concerning climate change. And I must say that I was one of the first, or probably the first, to talk about climate change 20 years ago. And this was because at an international meteorological forum, there were scientists, as we've heard today, who came and talked to us about different subjects. It was a symposium, and they showed us two graphs that really affected me and hit me. One was that since the 1900s to today, and this conference was approximately in 2005 or 2006, but the temperature graph up to the 80s and CO2 figures up to that period were more or less parallel. But then after that, there was a sharp increase. Now we know that scientists usually are cautious. And at the time, they were not talking about climate change. They didn't say that this is happening. Now we know that it is there. They said we have signs that are very concerning and that we are worried about. At the end of this meeting, I talked to them. I said, I read the weather. I talk about the weather for 2 or 3 minutes every evening. Sometimes it was 4 minutes at the time. So I said, I have approximately 3 or 4 million people watching. So I think that we have an important role to play. This role does not exist for the time being. So what I want to do is share this information, but particularly not just say this is what's going to happen, but just say, what can we do? How can we contribute? So my idea was to be positive about it, put a positive slant on it. And I felt that there was a missing link between the scientists and the general public. And the link was perhaps us through the media. And so I remember that we had some amazing meetings at Météo France. There were climatologists such as Jean Jouzel and many others, very renowned scientists. And at the time, and of course I can talk for hours about this, but I won't go on. But we came up with key sentences. My slogan was, it's good for the planet. And these are the sort of sentences or slogans that still exist 20 years on. Then there was a period when people didn't talk about it very much, but in fact, people started saying that if you drive 10 kilometers slower, then that's going to be that much better for the climate. But it was very difficult initially to talk to the public about this, because in a weather report or bulletin, because I would say, well, look, tomorrow you're going to have an increase in your temperature 4 degrees more in Lyon or in Paris. And at the end of my bulletin, I would say, in the end of the century, scientists think it's going to go up by 1 degree or 2 degrees. And people used to say, oh, in 100 years, we're going to have an extra degree. What does that mean? It doesn't really matter. I'm only interested in what I'm going to have tomorrow in Lyon or in Paris. So it was very difficult to get these messages across. But then gradually, the message did get across. I wrote some books in 2014 for the COP21. The WMO asked for a weather president from each country. And at the time, we already had crazy temperatures, and we've already gone beyond those temperatures today. So at that COP, all the different weather presenters actually talked about and came up with a weather report. And I think there are still climate skeptics, and we've got to be important. We've got to convince them. And I say, yes.
Other techniques, if you don't mind. I go to your neighbor first. That's Bernadette. Bernadette, you're working at Climate Central, Climate Matters, Climate Central. You're making huge amount of easy, accessible graphics to explain what's going on, what can people do? What big challenges do you face recently?
Well, we've come a long way in climate communication around the world and in the United States, but we have a long way to go. In the United States specifically, it's been political a long time, and we know that, but over the past couple of years, there has been action in Washington, D.C., and we had a major climate bill go through. And so a lot of the American population is waking up to climate change. They have a lot of questions. They know something's happening, but they don't always know what. And that's why there's still this opportunity to make connections to why it matters, the impacts that we're seeing, as we've already talked about here, from food, water, the things that we love, the places that we love, but also how quickly our solutions are advancing. We are going through an energy revolution, a transportation revolution, and this is really exciting. So there's a whole lot going on just over the past couple of years. In Climate Matters, specifically, our 3 editorial priorities for the program are attribution science. Andy's leading that work over here with our climate shift index, and that is global. And we talked about it last year for those who are here. Anyone can use that. And if you have questions about that connection between specific temperatures and specific weather events, you can talk to us or to Andy here. The second is health, because as we talked about in our session earlier, we're in a health crisis because of a climate crisis, and helping people understand that and what they can do to stay safe and prepared is really critical. Third, solutions. There are so many amazing things happening so quickly that it's really hard to keep up with. So helping people understand that so they can tell those stories.
Yeah, I'm working in a country in West Africa, Benin. I searched for 13.3 million inhabitants. So a lot of viewers to inform. I'm wondering, how is it going in your country? I listened to you lately. You use a lot of radio. Well, the graphics of Bernadette are not really useful for that. How does climate communication work in your country?
Bonsoir à tous. C'est d'abord.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I'd like to say I'm delighted to be here and be part of this panel. I'd like to start off with the present context and just say, first of all, that we obviously have to give information to our populations. Most of our people, most of our population is rural. Most of them, or at least 70% of our population, really lives off farming. And also, there are no irrigation techniques. They really depend on rain. And climate change obviously has a huge impact because already in our region, our seasons are no longer the same. And there are drought seasons that are longer. And also our seasons have changed a great deal. So our farmers and our rural population cannot count on the amount of water that they were used to or the sort of seasons they used to have. So now, as a meteorological services, we have to use simple language so that these farmers and that these rural people can understand what we're talking about. So frequently we use radio for that, particularly local radio stations or community radio stations. We, particularly for seasonal forecasts, we come down to the communes or communities where we organize meetings. And at these meetings, we try to explain these issues to local populations, climate change, change in seasons, and so on and so forth. And then also we use community radios a lot. We try to therefore get these messages across, but we must also use local languages of the commune. In Benin, obviously, French is an official language, but there are 56 dialects, and we should be able to communicate in those dialects and get these subtleties across about climate to the local populations and to rural populations so that they can take action and adapt to climate change.
Can you give me an example how you explain on the radio to a farmer what climate does with his work? Because he thinks about weather, he doesn't realize what's climate. What can he do? How do you do? Can you give an example?
OK. Un exemple, c'est
Well, let me give you an example. For example, in Africa, we give seasonal forecasts. That seems to be really the standard staple that we share with our farmers. So we could say we're going to have a lot of rain. For example, we might say you're going to have more rain this month than usual. Or we might say the rains are going to come earlier. When we have that sort of information, we give that information to the community. Now, this year, there's El Nino. So we try to explain what El Nino is and the effects. We explain about the sea or the ocean getting hotter, the fact that this leads to other phenomena which are then generated. So we explain that there are things happening in other parts of the world that will affect our country. And we explain that it's going to have an effect on our own seasons. So we say, hold on, maybe the rain season will come earlier. And we say, normally you plant in May, but we might say, hang on, the rain may come a little earlier, but then afterwards there may be long periods of no rain or drought, but once the season has started. And we would then say to them, don't plant right away, because based on the information we have, in fact, it hasn't really begun. The rainy season hasn't actually begun, so wait a little before you plant your seeds. And also we use images that the community can actually identify with. For example, we try to use local figures such as religious leaders or mayors. And in fact, if we work with them, they actually believe our information better and apply it better.
Of the meteorologist or climatologist telling about what the atmosphere will do, and an agriculturist who decides what kind of plants, when planting. You're not an agriculturist, you're not a farmer. So it's a very thin line on where you go, but you need to make the transition to the farmer's head, what he can do. Next to you sit Brigitte. Brigitte used to be a journalist. She works for the World Meteorological Organization. That's the authoritative voice of weather, climate, and water. And your background as a journalist might help, especially in this complicated mixed question, how to communicate the best way. What's your experience?
So I have a completely different context of communication than Diane, because I am basically representing the World Meteorological Organization, which is the authoritative voice, as you just said. What does it mean? It means that whenever people wonder what is going on with climate, they are supposed to come to us. And what happens when they come to us? They read our reports and they see a lot of scientific information, the type of information we heard about before that is very useful for all of us to understand what it is. But for people like the audiences of Diane, this doesn't work. So what can we do? Because at our level, we also need to communicate to the policymakers. We need to communicate to the media. We need to communicate to youth. We need to communicate to, I don't know, the banks, the private sector, all the people who want to do something about climate. So my word here would be, we need to work all together. There is no way we can achieve or do any action on climate if we are not working together. So that's what I implemented since I started my work at WMO. And I started with you for the first time to launch a campaign. Not only was I alone on the UN side, I was not. It was the initiative came from UNDP, the UN Development Program. They reached out to me saying, hey, we have a great idea. We want to put kids on TV to do the weather forecast. And we need you to have a look at this weather forecast for 2050, if it's accurate or not. Do you have any experts in your organization who can have a look at this scenario? And I said, yes, we're absolutely great. Let's give me the scenario. And then I asked them, but how are you intending to share about this and make sure that all TVs in the world will play the game? And they said, well, we don't know exactly. We are reflecting on that, working with press agencies and PRs. And so I said, listen, I have an idea. I have some great communities around here. And this is how we reached out to this community here, which is very close to the community. I'm also facilitating on the focal points for communication in the National Meteorological Services. Some of you are already part of this group, and some of you will be able to sign up very soon. I don't know how many of you in the room did actively participate to the Weather Kids campaign.
Who did? Hands up. Who did? A few. Okay.
Who in the room has never heard about it before now?
Oh,
wow.
who's lying?
Excellent.
Who is a slave?
Congratulations.
Actually, that's fine though. If no one says, I don't know anything about it.
That's amazing.
On en a très peu entendu parler.
We didn't hear much about it.
You didn't hear much about it.
No, we didn't.
Très peu.
Very little, really very little. It just was so.
Well, we had a French weather kid who was on TV in France, but it's you. Yeah. Do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, if you want to say something, I'm coming around. Where's the mic? Where's the mic? Hold on. Yes. I'm bloody hot.
Oui, alors effectivement.
Well, I work with France Television, and I participated in this campaign. I worked with the United Nations with a video consultation from February to October. I talked to the director of the service, and what I wanted to do was find a child and then actually look at the weather in 2050 in France and talk about that. And then things moved on. I continued to work with the United Nations, and then in March, suddenly we were in March. It was upon us. It was supposed to be on the 21st of March, which is the World Meteorological Day. And the idea was that children should actually somehow take over, kidnap the weather reports and talk about weather in 2050 and talk about what sort of weather they would have when they would be grown-ups. And we thought that the image and the message would be really good. But my bosses thought that getting a child to just say something and recite a text was not really good journalism. And so finally what we did was we went to high school and we met what we call eco-delegates. These are children who volunteer in the high school to actually get interested in biodiversity or whatever. So I met 3 of these students in high school, and I talked to them about how they imagine 2050 would be when they would be grown up. So we had 3 short interviews. And when the special bulletin went out, I also put out the weatherkids.org homepage on the back so that children could sign up, get interested in it. There was a lot of information on that homepage about what children can do. So I actually changed it to that sort of thing. So yes, I was involved.
Merci. Brigitte, is it an idea to show the video? Well, maybe not ask you. Oh.
This is the example.
Yeah, we can see this.
Yeah. So this is the example of Weather Kids. This action was on the PNUD, c'est le programme des Nations Unies pour le développement. Et de toute façon, c'était la même expérience.
And we had the same sort of experience. Children who actually presented the weather bulletins, weather forecasts for 2050, but our slogan.
You're from Tunis, right?
Where are you from? Tunis? Yeah, Tunisia. And this is the 2nd year running. Yeah, we've been doing this.
2018, we did Météo Got Talent Kids, and the winner had present weather forecast with me in the national TV. And for this year, with the kids, so the last sentences was very impressive because they said, for you, it's a weather forecast, but for us, it's our future.
That's true. It's our future.
Maybe I can just say that this campaign, before we see some examples of the reports that have been created specifically for some specific countries, this campaign was directed to the grown-ups, not to the children. So the grown-ups had to do pledges online for a kid, their kids or any kid they would know, and give their name and take some pledges to commit to do something for climate. So the interesting thing is everyone liked it because it was children, but it was not a children targeted campaign, even though some children were excited about it. So, but I suggest we watch a couple of examples. This it will not be comprehensive because I know many different, we had over 80 countries who actively participated. 400 broadcasters did broadcast this report, either in a tailored version or the official version of the UN. We had over 30 tailored versions. I suggest we just watch it quickly, and then we can think about what could be the next campaign.
Is it possible? Although
very special weather report. From up there to down here, everything is crazy. If we don't listen to scientists, things are going to be even crazier when I grow up. Let's look at the weather forecast for 2050.
موجات الحر ستؤثر على البعد سيمكنهم الأطفال وسيكون اللعب في الهواء الطلق حلما مستحيلا وسنواجه جفاف شديد ومحصول القمح سيتأثر ولن نجد الخبز بسهولة.
ทั้งหมดนี้สาเหตุเกิดมาจากฟ้าผ่าความร้อนของมลพิษทั้งหลายปกคลุมชั้นบรรยากาศโลกของเราสิ่งที่เราต้องทำต่อไปนี้ก็คือเอามันออกไปอย่าให้มันอยู่ตรงนั้นค่ะ
ariko nimwihebe haracyari amahirwe yo kugira ikirere cyiza imikoreshereze y'ingufu zidahumanya iri gukwira hose uhereye iburasirazuba kugeza iburengerazuba kandi inarema imirimo myinshi. Bei ya nishati ya jua imeshuka kwa kiwango cha chini zaidi ya mafuta na gesi. Tukiangalia picha ya satellite inaonyesha kabisa kuwa
Just ceci dat Oekraïne en Porto is het Benin. De combined informuar. Dus dat de vergooi met het territorio lucrum bas en local. Por ya visite que te hawe completos jitsan.
Reciclar, reutilizar, ahorrar energía son tres acciones que pueden hacer una gran diferencia.
también podemos usar el transporte público, plantar árboles y comer menos carne. En fin, cualquier cosa que genere menos contaminación.
Ci saranno forti venti politici, ma non saranno nulla in confronto alla potenza del ciclone Elsa, mia madre. Vi terremo aggiornati e controlleremo se gli adulti si daranno da fare per rimediare a questo problema che è completamente risolvibile.
We'll keep you posted as we track whether adults stop wasting time and seriously try to tackle the problem. Because it's not just a weather report to us, it's our future.
he's right. I'm curious, if something like this is done in your country, how do people look at this? Like adorable, or how can you use kids for this? Is it a political statement? How does it resonate in your country? For you, they say, okay, someone else.
It depends how you set it up.
It depends how you set it up. What do you mean, Paul? Hold on.
No, it just depends how you set it up on the air and how you introduce it and how you explain what it is that people are going to be seeing. You can't just put it up there. It's all about how you set it up to your viewers.
They can just see the video and you have to explain what they're going to see.
Well, I think you do have to explain what this is. And you also explain that these kids are going to be growing up into the world that we've been telling you about, this world we're going to have, but these are the people that are going to live it. And
Yeah,
you're
but
hearing
that's
from
what
them.
the kids say. So
Wait, but what? I didn't hear.
that's what the kids say. It's our future.
Right,
But
right.
you need also to say to the future, to the
Oh, I think you can say this is you hear these kids and say these are your kids, these are your grandkids, these are your friends' kids. This is the future of our planet, and I think it's all about how you present it to your viewers. Because I think the kids do a great job. The kids
They
were
do a great job.
fantastic.
But it's not about the kids. It's
Right.
not made for the kids.
It's not about the
made
kids,
for adults, and I know the adults nowadays.
That's why I'm saying it's
There's
about how
something
we.
behind it.
Yeah.
They want to sell us something. Is this political? In which country would you have some resonance like it's political, Patrick? One at a time.
Okay, thank you. Merci pour votre.
Thanks for showing us all these different weather bulletins in Côte d'Ivoire. We also had the same weather kids. In fact, we heard from the WMO about this initiative. Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire. So for us, obviously, this was important, and we are trying to sensitize and get more people to become aware about these subjects. So when a child actually gives the weather report, the parents get very involved as well, because children actually are sending a message across about the sort of world they're going to be living in. The parents become very aware about these issues as well. And so I think using children in this way reaches parents first, because they are the ones who are going to be responsible for the sort of air their children are going to breathe in a way. And so I think a lot of people feel that this has a real impact on our society. So the decision makers, the politicians realize then that it's a serious matter and that we need to take action. So these sort of weather reports do give some real effects, do have real effects. So I think it's a very good initiative. Thank you.
Helga,
right.
Helga, si je peux me permettre.
If you allow me. Where's our colleague from ARD?
A colleague from ARD. Oh, you're here. Do you want to share your story about this campaign?
No.
No? Okay.
It was too painful, Silke, or it was... Okay, I will tell briefly.
Yeah.
This is Silke Hansen from ARD.
ARD from German television and radio. So when I heard about the project, I was immediately on fire. So I get in contact with you and I said, yeah, let's do it. I will find a child to do it. And I found one. So it was easy and everything was prepared. And then I spoke to my boss and she said, no. And I said, oh, no. And she said, no. And there was no chance to do it because of, let's say, political reasons. So at the end, I was allowed to send the official one. We did it, but I was not allowed to do an own one.
That's interesting. What's behind that? It's just a kind of fear that they're not journalistic enough, that they're getting a lot of comments. That's what you do nowadays. Ask what's behind it. Patrick, you want to add something as well?
Plusieurs d'entre vous le savent.
Now, many of you know that we work at a station that has a 24-hour weather information, and we didn't sort of go along with it in the same way. I got authorization to promote the campaign, to write an article about it, to make a video about it, to say that there's this initiative to make people aware of these subjects, but I didn't actually use the tool of getting a child, because for our channel, it was important for us to say that we are the experts on weather, and we were not going to get children across talking on behalf of us. So we sent the message across and talked about it. Yes, but can I just add something? That all that we've heard shows that it's very difficult to have this sort of weather report on a channel. You spoke about it and others have talked about it as well. So I think we could perhaps do it again, but we have social platforms, networks, we have followers, And I think social networks are probably the more appropriate medium, because obviously a weather report is very short. In a bulletin, we can't always include these sort of initiatives. We don't get authorizations. But on the social networks, even if you are part of that social network as a channel, I think it's easy to use it. And I think we could all do it there. So I think perhaps we could start it again and say that we're not just going to do it on our television channels, or prepaid on national television, but on our social networks, because I think we'd have a huge impact.
C'était
The campaign really was on social networks mainly. The video was shown obviously on all the social networks. There were 12 million views. People who play video games. There were tens of millions of people who reacted on TikTok. So it was on every screen. It wasn't just television channels, it was on every screen. But the visibility impact obviously varies a great deal. And if channels themselves had not taken it on, it would have had less of an impact. I'm Nicolas Xavier from Belgium. I also want to say a few words to react to what Evelyne has said. We also had it on television and on our social platforms and networks. And I think the two together are really interesting, because you've got to create some sort of surprise effect so that people are wowed by it and that everybody talks about it. And if you don't actually have that impact, if you don't make a surprise effect, then it becomes quite complicated. It's also difficult to oblige your channel to show this sort of thing. We had to try very hard to get authorization. So what we did was we first showed the weather bulletin report, and then we followed immediately afterwards with the traditional weather report. And we said that obviously these were not the forecasts for the day, they were forecasts for the future, and that this child was just talking about the sort of future that he or she was going to be living with. So I think we should talk about the sort of surprise effect, talk about the effects on our social networks, and also always have that sort of wow effect so that people can really talk about it and hear about it.
Very, ouch, my ear. A very good interest. I have an example of Claire Martin. Yeah, hold on. I just want to add something. Due to the children. Claire Martin was she went to be a politician after being weather woman. Why would you go into politics? I don't know. But if you know Claire, you understand this is going to work. She was at the negotiations in Paris for Canada. Well, you know, Canada is a country with a lot of fossil fuel industry, and they thought the targets of Paris were way too high. And the sub-select delegation were all women. And they said, what we need to do is for children. Yeah, hell, it's heavy, but we need to do this. So they went to the government, all guys. Yeah, I'm afraid looking at Patrick, I'm telling it the wrong way. So she went to the government, all guys, and they said, it's way too high. We're never gonna meet the standards. And then Claire Martin says, well, listen, your son, your little boy, wants to be an astronaut. What are you going to say to the guy? Hopeless? Never gonna get there? Of course not. Yeah, go for it. Wow, nice, go. So you have to set high standards to go somewhere high. Maybe you get it, maybe not. And children are just disarming. So I think that's a very good way to use it. I want to put in a poll question. Hold on, keep it, hold on. Also for the people at home, so you can integrate as well. There are a lot of weather forecasters here, but you can just join in as the way you look at it. Climate change issues should not be addressed in weather reports because that are two different disciplines. Who does agree? Who does not agree? Who say, well, depends on the time or channel. He's got no opinion at all. I haven't seen all hands. No opinion at all. Oh, you do have an opinion. Because I was just turning into the political aspect. I think that's something we have to mention, because that's something in the changing times very important, especially in some countries and where you're on social media. I don't know how your social media works, but especially on X, former Twitter, I just post something like, oh, it's been hot in Europe, and I get a list of, not quoting, now I have to be careful because it's online, a list of certain people who are very obliged to protest, to say it's not possible, that I'm paid by the government, I'm paid by something else. There's something, an agenda behind it. Who's got an experience like that as well? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a Western thing? Oh, that's good. Enjoy. That is not there yet. Ada, you had an experience lately. You went to give some information, a lecture, and you encountered something like this, like people who were offenses to you. Can you tell something about that?
Yeah, this was recently. I'm sorry. This was recently. For the first time in my life, I felt very scared because I was going to give a conference to young journalists at the Overseas Press Club in Puerto Rico. And as I was about to go into the building, I realized it was a protest. You know, some people there. And when I started hearing my name, I say, why am I hearing my name in a protest? Well, I was there with the National Weather Service office, and we were going to be talking about climate change. So there was this group of people that were protesting that we were going to be indoctrinating, is that the right word in English? These young journalists on climate change issues. So that was really scary, because for the first time of my life, I realized that we are the target. And we're here to fight for our future descendants. We're here to make bridges with the communities. We're not here to be the target. We're here to be bringing hope to our communities and making changes. We all here share goals and values. That's why we're here. So please take care of yourself, because this is getting very dangerous.
But has it changed something the way you communicate?
I'm sorry.
Has it changed something
Not at all.
afterwards to you in the way you communicate? Are you being more careful?
No,
or?
not at all. But I realized that I need to be more attentive of my surroundings and the things that are happening. But, you know, in my social media, I get a lot of comments. You know, I understand that you can disagree about something, and I respect that. But unfortunately, I cannot stand on, you know, people being respectful to me. So I have to be careful on that. And I now think that it is a privilege for you to be in my social media. Believe me,
That's the turning around.
you have to be very careful, because it's your safety, it's your mental health that is in here on the line. So please take care of yourself. Yeah, thank you.
By the way, online, 24% does agree that it doesn't belong to the weather presentation to talk about climate. 24%, yeah, does agree. 46% does not agree. And depending on given time is 29%. I'll put straight away a new question and then you can respond. The new question is, climate communication is getting too political in my country. Is that often, rarely, or none? Often? Is it getting more political? Often? Who says rarely? Who says, well, no? Okay.
So I'm going to shift this a little bit here, because Well, it's been political in the United States for a long time, and I think people know our politics are a little crazy right now. So a lot of things are crazy right now. However, the vast majority of people consume news. They're looking for this information, and you're in a unique position to bring them this information. They're not yelling at you on social media. You do need to protect yourself, and you shouldn't have to go through that. Let's be clear. But there is a lot of research done in the United States on people's views on climate change. And Yale and George Mason University do this survey twice a year, going back to 2008. And they break it down into 6 categories of Americans and their views on climate change. The 2 on the left are alarmed and concerned. It's well over 50% of the population. The group on the right that's dismissive, all the way on the right, is only 10% of the population. They are the ones driving the conversation. There is 90% of the people out there who are looking for information, will listen to you. It may not be a priority. They genuinely have questions. They know something's happening, but they don't exactly know what. They don't know what to do about it. They don't know how to keep themselves protected. So yes, this exists, and I'm not naive to that at all, and protect yourself, but that's 10%, whereas 90% is really looking for this, and you are in an incredibly unique position, being on the front lines of our changing climate, to connect the dots for them. When something isn't normal, and you know it's not normal, and they're asking that, you can say, it's not normal, and make the connections. So, I see some hands.
Helga, si tu me permets, je voudrais ajouter quelque chose.
I'd also like to add something about the political side of things and the way we can communicate about climate change. I see that there is a totally different approach, because politicians, wherever you are in the world, they have their own agenda. They want to build motorways, nuclear power stations, whatever. They have their agenda. But when we start sending out signals, it's almost as if we're going to try to stop them in their agenda and their work program. So I think we should say that climate change doesn't only have negative effects. There are also positive effects that we should talk about. And instead of always say that watch out, there's global warming, we could also try to talk with decision makers on the positive side of climate change. And that's what I wanted to add.
All right, thank you. John.
Thank you, Helga. Listen, I mean, the last thing I want is anybody in this room leaving afraid to talk about the changing climate, all right? And pardon me for using this line yet again, but this is a time like no other to be courageous. If there's ever been a time to find the way to insert climate context, because I'm not talking about throwing a book over your audience's head, but just provide the climate context to the extreme weather events that people are seeing every day. People do want this information, Bernadette, you said. They do want this information. And yes, and everybody. Yeah, I mean, if there's any threat to you, of course, you need to find a way to, you know, call the authorities or whatever. I've never had that experience. You know, in 30 years of communicating, the experiences I have had with my audience are positive experiences.
They're afraid of you.
People thank me on the street for addressing the climate question. You know, they're not sending me, you know, making phone calls and sending me emails that you're crazy. I do get, the word is ratioed. I get ratioed on Twitter, X, from these crazies, the dismissives, the 10% who are very loud, who love to scream and shout and say that I'm crazy and that why are you, but who cares about X and Twitter, frankly? I mean, do I pay any attention to them?
But I have a question. You come from America. Everybody knows in America whether you're for Trump or you're for Biden. There's nothing in between. And if you're for Trump, shout, whether it's a lie or not, you shout that climate change is costs too much money, it's not working. So that means almost half of your country got an emotion that climate.
No, it's not half of the country.
No?
No.
Help us out.
Well, I mean, listen, elections in the United States are run in a very funny way where each state has its own power to elect electors. It's very strange. And I'm not going, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
No.
Okay. You know, I can definitely tell you that the people that are making these crazy statements in response to my climate posts on X, when you look at their profile, it's likely to say either hashtag MAGA or, you know, or any other extreme right-wing view. Okay. Generally, every single one of those people will be aligned with what you're saying, right? Trump and the extreme right. But at the same time, you know, it's not half of the people. These are the dismissive climate change deniers. That's 10% of the population. They just like to scream and shout, and holler and protest and cry. This is what they want to do.
Offer them a tissue.
So don't respond to them. Don't give them a platform. And the last thing I want to say, and you know, I'm going to state this, Bernadette, because it's worthwhile, because the New York Times is read worldwide. Okay, you know, there was yet another feature on the Iowa broadcast meteorologist who received a death threat, right, from presenting the weather. It's been featured yet again in American media for the nth time. Okay, that is not emblematic of the experience of the broadcast meteorologist in the United States.
No,
It
but
is
you have one
not.
threat, and that makes much more emotion than hundreds of thousands of compliments.
Sure, and it gathers a lot of media attention. You know, it's sensationalist because he got this one death threat, and you know, it helps that he makes himself readily available for additional interviews along the way, right? So it's not like he's hiding from this. You know, if the
I hate
press
to interrupt this
calls him-
conversation, but there's a clock ticking down here that's
Yeah.
at about 5 minutes, just
Very
so you
good.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I'll
that's the
stop.
first hour. That's
I'll
not the
stop.
second half hour.
But what I'm saying is broadcast meteorologists should be encouraged to continue to present climate context on their newscast. That's all I'm saying, because people appreciate that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
C'est vrai que dans les médias,
It's true that the media are known to be the sort of people who always talk about things that are not working. We always talk about the trains that are late. We never talk about the trains that are on time. And I think that we obviously encourage people generally to come up with something which is in this sort of vein. But we are now being encouraged to propose solutions. And when we're talking about climate change, there are solutions. So when you talk about what politicians, what governments, what others are doing, if we talk about some of the more positive things, then these people are going to help us and support us, particularly for developing countries. There are solutions that are possible. For example, meteorological information or weather information is very frequently given by politicians, because the meteorological services are in ministries and you have a minister at the head of the ministry. And I think this, therefore, is a way for the ministers to explain that they are taking steps to help and save their populations from extreme weather issues. So I think we as journalists should also talk about solutions in that way, more positive things.
I want to go to the next. I want to go to some positivity. How's the future going to look like in the way we communicate? Evelyne. Do you have a perfect example of how future weather forecast, climate communication can be, right? You have a video.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. In TF1, we really are increasingly concentrating on how climate change, global warming, our planet, So it's true that a weather report is very short. It's approximately 2 minutes. And most people only want to know whether it's going to be raining or not next day. But we have sometimes 2 or 3 times a week extra bulletin. But in her other news items, we have little bulletins on the sort of things that you can do to fight climate change or the sort of action you can take. And we also use augmented reality. And we've done this quite a lot. So this really represents huge amount of work, weeks of work. So for example, we had a 6-minute bulletin which was shown at the news, main news at 8 p.m. and it has received 3 prizes. It's normally 6 minutes long. We're just showing you a 2-minute clip. It explains climate change and its consequences from the beginning of the industrial era. And we would like to share this short extract with you.
Partout dans le monde, les relevés météo.
This has got subtitles.
Les records sont battus. L'année 2023 s'annonce comme la plus chaude jamais enregistrée sur Terre. Alors pour comprendre concrètement ce qui réchauffe notre planète, il faut regarder dans notre atmosphère. Avec les gaz qui la composent, elle agit comme une couverture qui conserve à l'intérieur une partie de la chaleur que nous envoie le soleil. C'est ce qu'on appelle l'effet de serre et c'est très utile. Sans cette couette naturelle protectrice, il ferait beaucoup trop froid sur Terre et la vie serait impossible.
Le problème, ce sont les activités humaines qui émettent beaucoup trop de gaz comme le CO2 ou le méthane. Ils s'accumulent dans l'atmosphère, ce qui piège trop de chaleur et c'est pour ça qu'il fait plus chaud. On voit très bien d'ailleurs le lien entre ces 2 courbes. Depuis 100 ans, les émissions mondiales de CO2 ne cessent d'augmenter et en parallèle, la température moyenne du monde augmente beaucoup trop vite.
Mais alors pourquoi a-t-on aujourd'hui autant de mal à se passer de ces énergies? Pour mieux comprendre, il faut remonter le temps et revenir à l'origine de toute cette histoire. Bienvenue au 19e siècle en Europe. C'est ici, à cette époque, que tout a commencé. Pour la première fois, on réussit à dompter ces énergies fossiles à grande échelle pour transformer notre façon de produire. C'est la révolution industrielle. La suite est toute tracée sur ce modèle. Au XXe siècle, en Europe et aux États-Unis, le moteur économique tourne à plein régime, propulsé par les énergies fossiles. Progressivement, nous sommes devenus de plus en plus dépendants de ces énergies pour travailler, nous déplacer toujours plus vite, toujours plus loin, mais aussi pour nous loger ou nous nourrir. Et voilà comment nous avons lié notre quotidien à ces énergies fossiles et donc à tout ce CO2 qui n'a cessé d'augmenter.
Alors ça, c'est juste un extrait.
This is just a short clip, but in the film, we also explained about the impact on the economy and also the impact on human lives, because it was a 6-minute long movie.
On continue parce que
Now, I also got a text message yesterday with Yannick Keza, who's wonderful. And in September, we're going to make another movie, another short film on the environment and climate change. But I can tell you this represents hours of work. And we normally film it in a special studio. There are 20 cameras all around the room. It's really a huge amount of work because you've then got to put all the images together. It took 2 months, but we got 3 prizes.
Afterwards, that other people can use this on social media to plug, or maybe there's a TV station who wants to show it. Is that a possibility?
Of course. Oui.
Yes, of course. I think it is already available on different social media in France. It is available, so you can see it if you want. I will give you the link. We will give you the link.
In France, so that will be great if we have some access outside.
Absolument.
Brigitte?
Brigitte, voulez-vous rajouter quelque chose?
About 20 minutes left. And I would like to collect tips how we can act in the big changing world from you. I gave you the homework, so it's not a surprise. What kind of tip would you like to give all your colleagues how an alternative way could be in communicating about climate change? We have a new procedure. You can go to the mic over there, and then the camera will follow you, I understood.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will answer two questions in one, because one was left behind. I usually communicate climate inside the weather information. Why? Trying to link weather with climate change. For instance, a hurricane, tropical storm, well, I have to link it with the temperatures rising in the sea. So the sea surface temperatures are higher than ever. So there is a link between, very clear link between that fact and the other one, that we have very active hurricane season in the Atlantic. El Niño, we have to link that, because El Niño has been also having an effect because of climate change.
And how do you explain that? In what way?
Well, I try to do it very simple. We have some kind of phenomena, and we say, well, this is that way because in the coming years, temperature will be rising again, more every year. You have seen it. Every year is hotter than the previous one. And so you have a Niño and a Niña that has a different kind of expression, the same as the temperature and the weather. So try to link, but very simple, so that the cause and effect could be seen.
This one, you said you had two answers, or there's two answers in one?
Just because the other one was that if we could link or mix.
Okay.
Both
you're
messages.
from Cuba. Is in Cuba, what would be the best way to communicate with your audience about what's going on?
Television.
Television.
Maybe you have some constraints in time, but you have to manage to do it. But simple, because people understand simple words.
Bernadette start laughing. Why, Bernadette? Because Jose's great.
Because Jose's great. It's simple. He makes the connection and moves on.
Yeah. Well, if everything would be that simple, then what are we doing here
That's
anyway?
why I was laughing.
Someone else who would like to add? You can speak in the microphone if you want to. Yeah, you have to.
Vous m'entendez?
Can you hear me? On France Television, I have a 5-minute weather report, which is divided into 3 parts. So there's one section, which is weather and climate. In the first section, we only talk about the weather and weather updates on what's going on. And what I find really interesting for this bulletin is there's always a question that comes from a member of the public, because obviously it's very important to create awareness. Because here we're amongst ourselves, but if you go outside, there are loads of people who know about climate change, but don't really know how to deal with it, how we can slow it down, how we can deal with it. So when you get a question from the public, it's really good because these are questions that people can relate to. And we have experts who answer. So you can have a climatologist, an expert on glaciers. So a glacier usually is very far from France, but you can talk about the melting of ice and what the effect will be on our lives. So a glaciolog will explain that. And I think that that's something because you can explain how this affects everyday lives. And then the third part is that we have a short report, a documentary on solutions as well, because obviously it's interesting to talk about what is good, positive side of things and not just create more anxiety and worry. But climate change is something that is, of course, very important for all of us, but we must try to have outreach, explain things, and also try and be positive.
This short reply, how many people are working on that? Because in my place in Belgium, it's a commercial channel. We are 3, it's me, myself, and I. So it's impossible to do all of this. So I was just wondering, how many people do you have working on that? Météo et Climat?
Microphone, s'il vous plaît. In fact, initially, we were in charge of our own weather reports. We were in charge of writing them, developing them, and we do have forecasters who prepare the maps for us. We used to do them before, but now because we have more tools, these are now done on computers. And what I do myself on my computer is that I add videos, I come up with graphs, figures, images. But for the climate part of Meteo and climate, we have people from the journalist desk. So these are people who take items from current affairs and they actually work on that. So the only fresh input is the question that comes from one of the audiences and answers that are provided by an expert. So that's something which is a new item which comes in. But we do have a team obviously working with us. And also we cover 3 channels. So this is why we have, it's France 2, France 3, and France Info.
Oh, please speak in the microphone next to you. No, we want to have your face on camera.
Not comfortable. All right. Over a 40-year career, I did a lot of climate change things in the broadcast. But there's one thing in doing it on television that you don't get. You don't get to see your audience. And so I do a lot of lectures. I'm invited to give lectures to groups, not university. I'm talking about just groups, like a group from a church. I've done some national ones. The American Chemical Society had me do a Zoom lecture for their whole membership. The Tau Beta Pi, the National Engineering Honor Society, had me do the same thing. And you see these people on Zoom and you get their questions. And I will say, first of all, at the end of the lectures, probably at each one, half the people come up to me and say, this is the education. This is what I needed to know about this. I didn't know what to trust, what to believe. And my lectures, I don't show pictures of starving polar bears and suffering penguins. If people knew before the lecture what I was going to do, they wouldn't come, because all I do is show all of my Climate Central graphs and charts and things. And what I do is explain the science in a very interesting way from the graphs and charts, and people realize they're seeing the science. And they, at the end of the lectures, the people are just amazed. And the important thing is they walk away with some talking points. And I'm not going to go through all of it. I mean, it'd be too long, but like, for example, one, I tell people, climate is what you expect, weather is what you get. So if you change your climate, you're changing your weather. And people understand that. I'll just one other, I've talked to you already, some of you about this. Physical things that directly impact people are things that they want to know and what they understand. They don't care about 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius warming. They don't understand it. They don't care about it. But if you tell them that their allergy seasons are getting longer and more intense, they care. If you tell them that Right now, we only get 13 days on average with a temperature of 36 or above, but in 50 years, if nothing changes, that's going to be 60. They care because that's something they understand. It's something that directly affects them. So that's the stuff I focus on. That's the stuff that means something to people, the things that will affect them physically that they understand. And I've had tremendous success. And I'll just say one last thing. At the end of most of those lectures, 1 or 2 people come up to me and ask me to speak to their group. People want to know this information. If you've been holding back because you're not sure, this is a Climate Central. Just talk to Bernadette. You know, I mean, they have a tremendous media library on their website. You can get these graphics. They're high resolution. You can put them right on TV. And it's just, people want to know this information. And more importantly, they need to know this information.
Thank you, Paul. For your tip, we go for more personal instead of anonymous. Into the mic.
Oh,
it's better.
Yeah. So, I agree a lot with what Paul just said, and it's fantastic. But I have another take on this. You guys might not like it. Is we should all just give up and go to the bar. You know?
No. I'm the timekeeper. You have.
I'm kidding. Okay, I'm kidding. No, but in Japan, people are very full of routine. Everything is routine in Japan. People like to follow structure, follow laws and rules. Yeah.
He's presenting in Japan.
Yeah.
Just in case you're wondering
Yeah,
why. He
and
knows.
the things that they do, you know, they take it to heart. And one of my colleagues used to say they like to tell people that Japanese people like to take breaks during the day, and they call it oyatsu, and then they have a snack during the time. But it also is determined by what the weather is like outside.
Mhm.
So when they were used to having tea time at like maybe 10, now it gets too hot, so the tea time has to move either too early or a bit later. So they tell them that because of climate change, now your tea time is going to change. Or they take the 4 seasons very serious, you know, spring, summer, autumn, and they eat different food during different seasons. And so if you tell them, well, the summers are getting longer, so there's not going to be an autumn anymore, there's not going to be a spring anymore, then you're going to miss out on cherry blossoms or the food that you eat during cherry blossoms. And that freaks people out. Even the young kids, you know, they don't want the end of spring. Spring is like the golden season. So nobody wants that to end. So if you explain information in that way, don't tell them it's going to be 3 degrees. What is 3 degrees anyway? You know, it sounds little to them.
Connect to traditional.
Yeah, connected to make it relatable to the things that they do and the things that they love. So if you do that, I'm telling you, people, well, they will try to change because they want to keep hold of their traditions and their cultures, the things that they used to love. And nobody wants climate change to change time to the bar, you know? Nobody wants
That's
to do
your
that.
tradition. It's our tradition afterwards.
Yeah.
But you have to wait. Thank you. Could you please speak in the mic? There is no mic. Join another table. Just grab a mic.
En fait, j'ai juste une histoire que je voulais raconter. C'est une...
I wanted to talk to you about something. This is something which is an African story. You know, perhaps you know that our parents and our grandparents had some sort of knowledge about climate. They were close to nature. They'd follow her animal behavior, the stars, and they would be able to tell when a season was going to start or the sort of weather they were going to have. And so they would know how to proceed. And this was information that was shared from generation to generation. And climate change has completely thrown this out of kilter. All this traditional knowledge is no longer really valid, and new and younger generations no longer know how to handle these issues. And this is why younger generations depend much more on weather presenters or weather services. In the past, they didn't actually bother with that because they knew these facts instinctively. So for us as meteorologists, this has given us an edge because now we have an audience. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it's also got a positive side for us because now we have an audience. This is something that we have experienced in Africa. And this is something which is really still happening.
Thank you. You want to add something? Find a microphone.
Alors,
I'm a journalist at radio and television in Cameroon. It's our national channels. As journalists, we are the link between scientists and our audience, the local population. And in fact, most of them, all this information, all this data about weather, etc., is actually designed to be shared with the audience. And what I always try to do is try to actually bring it down to a level which is accessible to the audience. As you know, in Africa, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, as I said earlier on, our population are mainly rural populations. These are people who are either herders, fishermen, farmers. And so you have to give them the sort of information. And also many of these people don't have degrees, they've not been to college. So in fact, the weather information we're giving them is not really for a knowledgeable public. It is for this sort of group of people who need it for their work. So we have to give this information in this way. We have to reach out to them. And if we talk about El Nino, they really don't give a hoot about it. But we have to explain using local language sometimes, or really very simple language, and talk to them about what's going on and exactly what they're experiencing. So these, as Diane said earlier on, most of these people use farming techniques that are dependent on the rain. And unfortunately, now the seasons and the farming timetables are completely upside down. So we have to be able to tell them that they should not actually prepare their fields, or they should not actually plant their seeds because somebody else said to them, it really is important to digest the ancestral knowledge. So you've got to actually now say to them when they've got to till the fields, when they've got to start planting, when they have to start preparing for the harvest, clear the fields. That is the sort of thing that we've got to share with them on a daily basis. And this is something that I've got to do as well, because I'm in charge of the environmental and sustainable development services. Every day we have to come up with some sort of little report or bulletin with that information, because if this information is not given in good time, unfortunately, a lot of them are going to start planting, and many times their crops fail or are lost. So this is the sort of job that we have to do as a journalist. And this is what I try to do every single day, so that we can share the information in good time for our local population, so that they can use them for their work.
Thank you. That tip is know your audience. You have something about knowing your audience. Bernadette, we spoke lately and you said, yeah, I've got 5 words, 5 tips I would give as a giveaway. I would like to mention this in changing communication. So
Helga had us thinking about this ahead of time, and some of you may have heard this, but this is what we've learned.
It's not working. We have another one. Another one.
Can you hear me now? Oh, okay. So over the years working at Climate Central, we have learned a lot about some effective ways to communicate. And a few that I think are pretty universal to share. First is know your audience. It is the golden rule of communication, and too often people forget. And when I say know your audience, I mean tone, topic, timing. Bring something heat related in the summer, not necessarily a snowfall report, something like that. Second, meet people where they are. We are super interested in this topic. We've traveled all around the world to be here. Not everyone cares about this as much as we do. So we have, sadly, climate change is affecting everything we're doing. So meet people where they are, connect on shared values, things that matter to them, traditional places that they go, things that they love, their family, communities, future generations. 3, simplify. We're learning a lot of cool science, just like weather. Break it down into simple terms that connect with people, or you're gonna lose them. 4, personalize, localize. As people were saying here, they don't understand a 1.5C, but they do understand how many extra hot days in their area, or how many strong hurricanes, or not being able to get water, as we were talking about earlier here with Angola. 5, tell a story when you can. You're in a unique position to be telling stories. Like we talked about with games earlier, stories open minds and take people on journeys. So know your audience, meet people where they are, simplify, personalize or localize, and tell a story. And as John said too, don't be afraid. There are things to be aware of and should be shared amongst this community, but you have science and you have public opinion that people want to know this.
And the good thing is, yeah, give her applause. Yeah! And the good thing is, she's gonna put it in the WhatsApp group.
I will. I'll put it there.
So we will have, but it's also a responsibility, yeah, Jose? You have to do it that way after you read it. So, yeah, you would like to add something? Please put on the mic.
Oui, merci.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to add something as well. And this concerns Côte d'Ivoire again. And I think that it's very important to actually share information with the general public. And so to get that message across, we have used influencers. And we have several reports, weather reports, one sort of weather bulletin for example, more intellectual, educated people. But then we have other weather bulletins that are shared on different media, social media, either by comedians or by people who are influencers. Because it's important for us is to get the message across to the largest number of people. So the different reports or bulletins are quite different. Some of them, particularly the ones that are shared by comics or comedians, are very successful because young people love them and follow them quite a lot. And so this means that we can get these messages across quite easily. But obviously there have been some criticism, because some people said that weather reports and bulletins were supposed to be serious, and having comics or having these sort of influencers on there was really not the right thing to do. But what we thought was actually that look at how many people are following these people. And if you want to share information and reach a large number of people going through these influencers or others, you can really get there very fast. And therefore, even though there are some people who are critical, we think it's really essential, because this way you reach a wider audience. So these are the sort of doubts or worries we may have sometimes, but this is how we reach our wider audiences.
Even if someone is just objecting or whatever, you're touching them. It's doing something in their emotion. Whether it's not emotion you prefer, but something is happening, and maybe you planted a seed, and within a few years, suddenly he sees the sun shines and he knows what's going on. So good work. To my panels, I would like to ask you as well, what would be your final tip, or what would you like to say as last? You too.
Maybe it will be just the tip number 6, and it is really about trying to do something together again. I don't know if in the background, if you can bring back this slide where there is the QR code. I hold on to it because I have a single Excel document in which I have names of all people working in climate, wanting to get climate to the next level in our communication, in our social media, on TV and everywhere. And not only I would like you to share the next campaign, I would like you to be involved in shaping it, in bringing ideas. We will most probably have a campaign on early warnings, the next one. We are looking into some subjects like what would you save, like looking into what people would take with them if they had to go away from home or something like that. We are still in the brainstorming moment, but I would really love to hear from all of you. So if you sign up on this little form, this form was created for the National Meteorological Services, so they could nominate a focal point. But for me, you are all focal points, and it's not only for the National Meteorological Services. If you're from a TV, it's totally okay to be in this list. And we want to communicate with you. We want to share also your initiatives, because they are important. If you do a campaign, I don't know, in Michigan or anywhere, we are happy to share about it and to spread the word. So please take 1 minute, just put your name and email. And I promise I won't bombard you with emails because I don't have so much time, but for
I don't have much more time either as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigitte. Diane, would you like to make a last statement?
Yes, what I would like to add is that it's also important to diversify the channels that you use to reach out to your different audiences and adapt your information to the audience that you're dealing with. And I think it's also important to talk about meteorological effects in every message that we send out.
I would say,
we've got you. Go to Evelyne. We'll go to Evelyne.
Ok, pas de souci. Non, simplement.
Well, it's true that we have weather reports that are frequent, but they're very short. And I think that if you want to get a message across, you've got to make sure that it is almost a one-off item and that it has a real impact. As we have these reports every day, because if you have an excess or excessive amount of information, actually you're killing the message. And if you really want to get across, you've got to have a strong message. It could be a strong meteorological message, absolute record. So anyway, you've got to give that information in a concrete, positive manner. And it could just be a one-off, as I said, so that it really hits people.
No, Bernadette is done. Ada, your final tip, your final statement.
Well, I just want to say to focus on solutions that are grounded in empathy. We lack empathy. We don't want to be dismissive of the pain of others. We need to make sure that we understand what is happening in your communities. And climate change affects all of us in different ways. You may be safe in one place, but you may not be safe in another place. And you have to touch ground, focus groups, talk to people, and then act. Also, I want for you to be a bridge in your community and optimize the ripple effects of doing things right. Sometimes we think about the ripple effects, the domino effects of all the things that can go wrong because of climate change. Well, let's do it the other way around. Let's do it the positive way. What are the ripple effects of doing things right? And I just want you to understand that this is our moment. And this is the time that we all have to make a difference. So let's get it grounded on compassion, empathy, and do a great science. Thank you.
And that are not only female characteristics. Those male can be empathetic as well. No, I'm gonna be at the bar, right? Because I have no time anymore. So would like to round up. I really do hope you have heard some tips you can act on, that you feel a little bit more inspired. That we're doing a good job. Whatever they say we're doing a good job, aren't you? Okay. I would like to thank the viewers at home for joining us. I hope you have heard some good tips and have some respect for the meteorologists. They're hardworking people, just working for a better planet, also for your planet. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the sponsors for making this possible and HumanSat for being a host for 2 days. Well, not only a host, but an excellent host. I have to say it rightly. If we close up, we're gonna make a picture together all here on stage. And don't run because it's going to be rainy. So just stay here, talk, give each other tips, tell me what you wanted to tell, connect with each other, feel empathy. And thank you so much for being here in Darmstadt at HumanSat. Thank you so much for being around here.